Are we alone? To this day, the inhabitants of planet Earth have looked to the stars for proof of other life. But the truth isn't out there, it's in here. Since World War II, the British government has been watching us, watching the skies. Buried in the vaults of the Ministry of Defense are thousands of reports on UFO sightings, some left unexplained. But now, after decades of secrecy, the files are being released. And for the first time, the truth about Britain's UFOs is revealed. A near mid-air collision.
I can't speculate on what it was, I really can't. I mean, I don't know to this day what it was.
A World War II bomber's close encounter.
I don't talk about it too much to people, only close friends.
An unidentified object caught on radar. And new evidence on one of the most celebrated UFO cases, the Welsh Roswell.
If it could be shown that any UFOs were extraterrestrial in origin, people's entire belief system would fundamentally change.
Strange, unexplained stories that leave many wondering if there really is life out there. What are three popular word searches on the internet? Perhaps the first two are no surprise. UFOs have an incredible hold on the popular imagination, but few myths have involved government investigations, surveillance, and cover-ups. UFOs have. One person who knows just how seriously UFO sightings have been taken by the British authorities is ex-MOD operative Nick Pope.
From 1952 onwards, it was decided that there really needed to be a small unit set up permanently to research and investigate the UFO phenomenon. And really from the 50s right up until 2009, the Ministry of Defense did have a small project looking at the UFO mystery.
Pope and the UFO desk in the 90s, helping add to the thousands of files the ministry had gathered for decades.
Subject making his way.
Now that they're being released from the vaults, key UFO eyewitnesses give their side of the stories. And UFO experts, skeptics and believers interrogate just what the MOD was keeping secret. Dr. David Clark is the journalist who helped first persuade the MOD to release the files.
If you look in the files, there are thousands of unusual things people in the sky from right across the British Isles. There's absolutely no doubt that people see things in the sky that they can't identify. They always have done.
January 6th, 1995. Two experienced pilots of a Boeing 737 carrying 60 passengers from Milan to Manchester report a near collision. It's an incredible sighting of an unidentified flying object which sends the authorities into a spin.
In the defence files, there are quite a number of incidents involving near misses between civil aircraft and unidentified flying objects. The most impressive of all was a report that was made by the crew of a British Airways 737.
Speedbird 5061, overhead pennines 9 miles.
They were just about to enter this cloud bank, quite a clear sky, good sort of vision. Suddenly the first officer said he saw this object coming towards him like an illuminated Christmas tree.
What the hell?
It was so low in its approach and so close that he automatically ducked, thinking there was going to be a collision. And this thing just zoomed past, and immediately he turned to the captain and said, "Did you see that?" The captain said, "Yeah, I saw it as well."
Immediately the pilots radioed into Manchester Control Tower.
There's a lot of concern amongst air crews about what damage could be done to their reputation if they became known as, you know, the crew that see flying saucers. So it was interesting in this case that despite that, these two air crew decided that when they landed they were going to file an official air miss report. So that would then trigger a full detailed investigation by the Civil Aviation Authority, which is exactly what happened.
For the first time, the MOD files show how this extraordinary incident sparked a full-scale investigation conducted by aircraft near-miss investigator Anthony Booth.
Well, it was unusual for a start because it was the only one in my memory in 7 years of working in that particular department that I'd actually dealt with something like this. We could talk to the pilots, both the pilots. We would go through looking at radar recordings, RT transcript recordings of the voices of the pilots, recordings of what Manchester Air Traffic Control had to say. We just looked at anything that might shed some light on what this object might have been.
The pilots now refuse to talk publicly about the near crash, but the MOD files recall what they told Anthony Booth at the time.
My attention was initially focused on the glare shield in front of me, but I was diverted by something in my peripheral vision. The object had a number of small white lights, rather like a Christmas tree. The high speed of the object, although unable to estimate its distance, it was very close.
There's a transcript of the conversation between the captain of the 737 and ground control.
This is Speedbird 5061. We just had something go down the right-hand side, just above us, very fast.
And Manchester immediately come back and say, well, there's nothing seen on radar.
Was it an aircraft? Well, it had lights. It went down the starboard side very quickly.
Manchester say, and just above you?
Just slightly above us, yes.
Manchester then advise them to keep an eye out for anything, but they can't see anything at all. It must have been very fast.
So we'll go down very quickly after it passed you, I think. Okay, well, there you go.
The Manchester control tower could not find any radar signal. To radar expert Doug Robb, this is extraordinary.
It says the likelihood of such activity escaping detection is remote, as the area is well served by several radars, and any movement at the levels in question would almost certainly have generated a radar response. Nothing was seen.
So what was it that avoided radar detection? The MOD files showed that the investigators and pilots considered all the possibilities.
It was a hang glider. At night, he's suicidal.
Hang glider would not be picked up by normal radar, no.
A comet? No, I don't think so.
A meteor could be detected on re-entry if the radar was looking exactly in the right direction as that piece of debris went past at some speed.
Military? Maybe, but I didn't recognise it. And we're near a major airport. It would have shown up on the radar response. Spy plane? I don't think so. Didn't look like a stealth.
Stealth aircraft would not be picked up by normal radars. If a spy plane is being kept secret, it's not going to be flying where people can see it. And certainly nowhere near airliners.
UFO? That'd be daft. I don't know.
These pilots are not lying. They did have an unusual experience, which to them remains baffling.
The files show the investigation seriously analysed the possibility of military activity, but they found no evidence from any official source.
It seems most unlikely that such a flight would have been conducted so close to a busy international airport.
So what was it? We revealed the conclusion, locked away in the MOD vaults since 1995, reached by Anthony Booth's investigation.
Most of the incidents that we looked at, we could arrive at some conclusion, definite conclusion, but in this case, we couldn't really. We had to come up with an assessment of cause and risk. Both the risk and the cause were unaccessible.
Degree of risk, unaccessible. Cause, unaccessible. Really, that statement is really, really unusual to find that in an official air miss report, and it's basically saying we don't have a clue what was seen.
Look, they'll say back at BA.
I think they might rib us about this one.
At the end of their the summary of the working group's discussions, it says that there is no doubt that these pilots both saw an object and that it was of sufficient significance to prompt an air miss report. Unfortunately, the nature and identity of this object remains unknown. To speculate about extraterrestrial activity, fascinating though it may be, is not within the group's remit and must be left to those whose interest lies in this field.
To some ufologists like Nick Pope, the absence of any real conclusion leaves serious and unanswered questions.
Now, to me, this was quite extraordinary. UFO does not mean alien spacecraft, but clearly, in some people's minds, whether it was the pilot and the first officer, or whether it was the investigators at the Civil Aviation Authority or the Ministry of Defence, clearly somebody was thinking, well, maybe, just maybe, this is something extraterrestrial.
I can't speculate on what it was, I really can't. I mean, I don't know to this day what it was. All I know is that we can't assume we know everything in this day and age. There may be things that we don't know about.
The Manchester near-miss investigation shows just how seriously unexplained sightings were taken by the MOD. But the UFO desk had been receiving reports from pilots for decades. The files reveal sightings during World War II, and in some cases these were considered so grave they were referred right to the top of government. The newly released UFO files confirm what many experts suspected. The British government was investigating unexplained sightings as far back as World War II.
I don't talk about it too much to people, only close friends who experienced perhaps flying during the war.
Spring 1944. Britain was engaged in heavy bombing raids over Germany. Rumours of strange, unidentified missiles were getting through to top command. Considered a threat to public morale, the MOD files reveal that the order to keep them secret came right from the top. Sightings such as the one seen by gunner Bernard Dye.
Now I have here a personal wartime diary. I'll read you an entry which I wrote on the 26th of April. Operation Essen. 300 aircraft raided Essen.
Dye then recorded the most extraordinary sight.
By unidentified objects, which I describe as just red balls of fire.
This is the first time Bernard Dye has spoken on television about what happened that night.
We left the target area and we were heading back towards Mildenhall, our base. We were heading across France. Everything appeared to be peaceful. Suddenly I saw 3 balls of fire coming up from below and reported this to our pilot, Arthur Horton, on the intercom. A few seconds afterwards, the rear gunner, Brian Harper, he observed 2 more red balls of fire. Immediately, Arthur was a bit perturbed, and were they fighters? No, not fighters, Arthur, just balls of fire coming towards us. I said to Arthur, no, evasive action, corkscrew, starboard, go, go, go. We travelled over 300 miles per hour. The aircraft was shaking like a leaf, and still they were following. The pilot was getting worried about burning the engines up. Engineer, Dave, what about the engines? Never mind the engines, skipper. Keep going, or something to that effect. The words were rather rude. It certainly gave me and the crew the willies to see them. After a short distance, these 5 red objects, they just got slower, and the red lights disappeared into the blackness below, and we got safely home. Well, when we got back to Mildenhall, our base, each crew is interrogated by intelligence officers, and they just laughed at us. And this upset the pilot, and, he said, you wouldn't bloody well have been laughing if you'd have been sitting with us in the aircraft.
What did gunner Bernard Dye think they were?
Didn't know what to think, but I thought they were just a new weapon that the Germans had invented.
Bernard Dye was not alone. Other World War II aircrew had also reported unexplained sightings, and we now know that at least one of these reports was suppressed, and the order to do so came right from the top. Wartime Prime Minister Winston Churchill was so terrified the report would leak out, he ordered a 50-year blackout.
Mr. Churchill declared that the UFO incident should be immediately classified for at least 50 years, and its status reviewed by a future Prime Minister.
Churchill's order referred specifically to a late World War II sighting made by a British aircrew returning from a reconnaissance mission over Germany. The files record,
"My grandfather was present during a debate about an unexpected incident experienced by an RAF bomber crew.
The MOD files show that the story originates from the grandson of Churchill's bodyguard, who had been present at an urgent meeting between the Prime Minister and the US commander of the Allied forces, General Eisenhower, who discussed the incident together.
He was writing in to see if the ministry could confirm this story, that this guy who was the bodyguard was present at a discussion between Winston Churchill and Eisenhower about a mysterious incident when the crew of a Royal Air Force reconnaissance aircraft that had seen this metallic object that had appeared by the side of their aircraft, and it followed the aircraft, and it behaved in a way that was completely unexplainable in terms of it being, you know, a German aircraft or any other sort of Nazi flying machine that they were aware of.
A leading aircraft expert was also at the meeting.
He dismissed any possibility that it could be a missile, since a missile could not suddenly match its speed with a slower aircraft and then accelerate again.
Churchill was determined this would go no further.
Another person at the meeting raised the possibility of an unidentified flying object, at which point Mr. Churchill declared that the incident should be immediately classified.
But the file goes further. One extraordinary line explains just how fearful Churchill was of public reaction to this UFO sighting, if it ever got out.
This event should be immediately classified, since it would create mass panic amongst the general population and destroy one's belief in the church.
But the files also reveal that this wasn't the first time Churchill had got embroiled in UFO sightings.
In October 1912, there was sightings of mysterious lights in the sky over the dockyards at Sheerness in Essex. And Winston Churchill was the First Lord of the Admiralty, and he had to look into this, and Churchill had to admit in Parliament that he couldn't explain what had been seen.
The files show that even after the war, Churchill took a personal interest in unexplained sightings.
In the aftermath of the sightings in Washington, D.C. in 1952, that made all the news headlines, Winston Churchill again became interested and sent the memo to the Secretary of State for Air. What does all this stuff about flying saucers amount to? What can it mean? What is the truth? Let me have a report at your convenience.
Until now, gunner Bernard Dye never knew there were other World War II sightings that Churchill wanted kept secret at such a critical time in the war. We showed him the newly released MOD file on Churchill.
Well, after reading this report, it sounds, you know, really identical to what we witnessed and saw that night. I haven't heard of this before, but it doesn't surprise me that he was told about it, because things happened during the war years, and there were other objects obviously appeared.
It's interesting that during the 1940s there were a very large number of sightings reported by aircrew, and there are various Royal Air Force files at the National Archives that detail some of these reports, rocket phenomena they were described as, but they were never able to explain them. And at the end of the war, when they debriefed some of the Luftwaffe pilots, they said that they'd seen very similar things themselves, and they thought they were Allied secret weapons.
So is there an explanation as to what the aircrew saw? Dave Clark has his own theory.
They just thought that it was a combination of misperception on part of the aircrew. They were expecting enemy action because they were so charged up on adrenaline.
UFO or not, the files show that the World War II leaders were desperate to keep such sightings away from the public. The next file reveals how, even decades later, the government was still panicking about UFOs. Many UFO experts believe that the Pitlochry file illustrates one of the most significant UFO conspiracies of recent times. It involves photographs of an unidentified object captured flying over a remote Scottish valley. The photos were sent to the MOD, but mysteriously went missing. Journalist Mark Pilkington has spent years trying to track down these UFO images.
The Pitlochry photographs in the MOD files date back to the 4th of August 1990, when two witnesses on the A9 near Calvine, near Pitlochry, allegedly saw a large diamond-shaped craft hovering in the air for about 10 minutes and took 6 photographs of it. And the object that they claimed to have seen was accompanied by 2 aircraft, which the MOD later identified as Harriers.
The photographer has never been identified. He sent the 6 photographs to the Scottish Daily Record newspaper. The paper never ran the story. Instead, they referred them to the MOD for investigation.
The Ministry of Defence took their own copies of the photographs, which have since disappeared. They, according to the files, sent the original negatives back to the Scottish Daily Record, which inexplicably never ran a story on the subject and never published the photographs, and presumably returned them to the 2 men whose names have been removed from the file, so we can't ask the 2 men. So mystery piled upon mystery.
All that remains in the files is a photocopy of the alleged photographs. UFologists later mocked up this photo of what was seen. But Nick Pope dealt with the original photos and file when he worked behind the MOD desk.
Both the Defence Intelligence Staff and the Joint Air Reconnaissance Intelligence Centre analysed this very carefully, and the consensus was clear on this. This was a real object. It was maybe 25, 30 metres in diameter. I sat down with my opposite number from the Defence Intelligence Staff at a briefing about UFOs. We discussed this photograph extensively. This was something that was of defence interest, because clearly it could do something that we couldn't, and we wanted that technology.
The MOD was determined to play down the incident.
There's an interesting briefing by the Ministry of Defence press office on defensive lines to take if these photographs made it into the newspapers, and they were asked questions about this. And there's a list that basically says that we have looked at the photographs and no definitive conclusions have been reached regarding the large diamond-shaped object. And if they were pressed by the media, they were told to say all sighting reports received by the Ministry are referred to the staff in the departments which are responsible for the air defence of the UK.
During his time with the Ministry, Pope had a blown-up copy of the photograph on his office wall until it was personally taken down by his superior.
One suggestion was that this was a secret prototype American spy plane. My head of division convinced himself that this probably was some secret aircraft or drone, and he ordered that this be removed.
We know from the files that there was a lot of internal discussion about, were the Americans flying this incredible spy plane, and if so, why had they not asked for permission, for this thing to fly through British airspace?
Journalist Mark Pilkington believes that events at the time could well have influenced what people thought they had seen.
This was just 2 days after the first Gulf War had broken out, and there were certainly great deployments of aircraft towards the Middle East, and the UK was a kind of sort of stop-off point and a sort of launch pad for a lot of those aircraft.
The MOD were clearly worried about public reaction, just as Churchill had been 4 decades earlier. So was there a cover-up by the MOD over the mysterious Pitlochry photographs?
There's a possibility that the Ministry of Defence destroyed these images, possibly because they thought that they were some American spy plane that they'd rather we didn't know about, or maybe if this thing genuinely remained unexplained, because we simply didn't want the embarrassment of saying that there might be things in our airspace with speeds and manoeuvres that exceed everything that we've got, and yet which remain unexplained.
However, all we're basing this on, we should make clear, is a very grainy, fuzzy black and white image that, for all I know, could have been drawn by a child with crayons.
Mark Pilkington is still looking for the real Pitlochry photographs to find out just what did put Britain's defences to the test. But 6 years later, on Britain's east coast, another UFO sighting sparks off a full-scale military investigation and a direct challenge to the Secretary of State for Defence. In 1996, the Ministry of Defence was drawn into a serious breach of UK defences by a UFO over East Anglia. MOD files reveal it not only involved the police, Coast Guard and RAF, but a call to the Defence Secretary to scramble jet fighters.
I'm very concerned about an incident that occurred off the East Anglian coast recently involving a visual unidentified flying craft sighting that was correlated by various different military radar systems. Why weren't our jets scrambled?
It was one of the biggest UFO scares ever. And it all started one quiet October night on the East Coast.
It was the police officers, actually, who phoned in the first reports. There's an extract from that. In the early hours of the morning, the police are saying we can see a red and green rotating light in the sky directly southeast from Skegness. It looks to be high in the sky directly over the Wash.
The patrol officers reported the sighting to the station sergeant.
I immediately phoned it through to the Skegness control room, who relayed it onto Great Yarmouth Coast Guard Maritime Rescue, suspecting it might be an incident over the sea.
We had a report at about 3:15 local time from Skegness Police, and they could actually see this light in a southeasterly direction. We were uncertain of what it was at the time, and we immediately made a report to the local air defence radars to see if they could see anything.
The call went through to RAF Neatishead, the most important air defence centre in southern England.
Practically radar has a contact bearing at 221 degrees at...
They noticed that on one of the radars, a blip that they couldn't identify, that wasn't an aircraft.
Could the mysterious radar blip and the strange lights seen by the police be the same thing? Panic calls from the public started to come in.
No, I don't think they're invading.
A call was put out to shipping to keep a lookout for unidentified lights. Then a tanker came back.
MV Conocastle Yarmouth, we're seeing a group of lights above the Wash.
The vessel at sea was the Connor Coast, and she was in much this sort of area.
At 3:50 a.m., Patrol Officer P.C. Leyland rushed onto the police station roof to video the strange lights and managed to capture 5 minutes of footage, now showing a single stationary white light. News of the sighting spread quickly through the UFO grapevine.
The transcript of the conversation between the Coast Guard and the police and the trawler crew was leaked to the local news, and it suddenly became this huge UFO incident that got to the attention of the local MP.
The sighting gathered such momentum, even local Labour MP Martin Redmond got embroiled and started asking difficult questions.
Martin Redmond said, look, you've got police officers seeing UFOs, you've got Royal Air Force officers tracking them on radar, and yet you don't even get the aircraft in the air to take a look at this thing.
Here's a copy of the letter that Martin Redmond MP sent to the Right Honourable Michael Portillo, Secretary of State for Defence, and he says, I'm very concerned about an incident that occurred off the East Anglian coast recently involving a visual unidentified flying craft sighting which was correlated by various different military radar systems. While I'm interested in finding out what was seen, my primary concern stems from the absolute shambles that such an event seemed to cause. So he's really sort of having a go at the Ministry of Defence and saying, you know, why didn't you react to this? What are the RAF doing? So this really stung the RAF.
The files reveal a picture of chaos. The letter sparked off an MOD investigation to explain the RAF's resistance. Doug Robb was operations manager on the night. We showed him the MOD findings. He wasn't surprised by the conclusions.
This diagram is the radar plots over Boston on that night. And in summary, it shows that Claxby picked up the object, but it didn't move, and it was on land. And after investigation, it was decided that it was the church tower, the Boston Stump, as it's known.
The files were certain this was the culprit.
The church is known in aviation circles as the Boston Stump and appears occasionally on some radars in certain radar propagation conditions.
They said that this was a completely separate phenomenon to the bright stationary lights that had been seen by the police from Boston and Skegness and by the tanker crew.
The report concluded there was no justification to order the scramble of RAF fighters, much to the chagrin of the local MP, Martin Redmond.
You'd scramble for a high-speed incoming aircraft 200 miles away, but you're not going to scramble aircraft for a fixed object on land. I mean, what's the threat?
If what the radar picked up was indeed a church, what then would the mysterious lights seen by the police and the tanker crew? The MOD scrutinized the police video footage.
It suggests a distant celestial source.
The MOD sent the footage onto the Royal Greenwich Observatory for analysis. Their report has been kept buried since 1996 in the MOD files. UFO and astronomy expert Ian Ridpath was shown their conclusions and the police video.
If you look at the police video, you can see it's just a bright dot of light just sitting there, not appearing to do anything. So, to me, this shows that even the most impeccable witnesses can actually make what is really a basic mistake, which is just misidentifying bright celestial objects. Well, the most common culprit is the planet Venus. In fact, it's called the queen of the UFOs, and this is because it's the brightest object in the night sky after the sun and the moon, which could have been what the police were seeing.
He also believes there's an explanation for the colors of the lights.
When the camera zooms in, very often the camera will completely lose focus, and you can actually see some odd shape to the light, which is actually the diaphragm of the camera.
But this doesn't explain what the tanker crew observed. The MOD investigation found that they saw a light coming from a different direction to Venus, and they were baffled.
These lights remain unexplained.
But expert Ian Ridpath believes there is an answer.
The object that the tanker saw to the north, I think, was another bright star called Vega, which is also just appearing to twinkle and flash multicolored lights.
UFO expert and skeptic Dave Clark believes there is a reason why this escalated into such a major incident.
This happened in 1996, which was the very height of the popularity of the X-Files series on TV. It was the biggest sort of year, the 1996-97, in terms of number of reports they received since 1978.
So is this case closed for East Anglia? Or will more mystery emerge, just as it has, with one of Britain's most celebrated cases that refuses to go away, the Welsh Roswell? In 1974, in North Wales, thousands of people experienced a violent earth tremor and lights were seen falling from the sky. Some ufologists believe a UFO crashed, and there's been a cover-up ever since of the Welsh Roswell.
Oh, a heck of a bang, yes. Oh, yes, it's like a tremor it was in the house, shook the houses. We were in your houses.
And it seemed to come right on top of their head until the house was coming down.
There were lights coming from the top of the mountain, just up over there.
24th of January 1974 at 21:50 GMT. 5 bodies spectacularly incandescent were observed traversing the sky.
New information has been revealed that opens the mystery further. Named as one of the main witnesses in the Berwyn incident is Hugh Lloyd, then a 14-year-old farmer's son. Just after 8:30 p.m., Hugh's family felt the massive earth tremor. It was a frightening experience. Almost 40 years on, Hugh still remembers that day as if it were yesterday.
It was like this thud, and straight away the whole place started shaking very violently. The light flickered and the lights in the picture on television, snow on the screen. But we were all frightened. We didn't have a clue what it was. And Enoch said it must be an explosion. And then the phone started ringing. Hello? Like neighbours, phoning to ask, did you feel that? And then roughly about 20 minutes, there was a knock on the door. And there was a police officer there. And he said, we've had reports there's a plane crash that's come down on the Berwyn, and we'd like to commandeer your Land Rover to go up there. Me being 14, I said, well, Enoch, you better drive it. We carried on up the mountain about half a mile, maybe 3/4. We drove up the track and we stopped, got out and got torches, and it was very quiet and very dark, but nothing to be seen.
How are we going with the torch?
One of them said, there's nothing here, it's too quiet, can't see anything, we might as well go down. So we turned back to the vehicles, and as we were approaching the vehicles, we saw this very bright white light up the valley. Just behind those trees there, up to the left in the valley between those two mountains. A very bright white light, coming up from the ground, pointing upwards. But it was, very, very bright. I knew it was coming from the ground, but we couldn't actually see the source of the light because it was, in the valley itself, being hidden. The light didn't look like a plane crash. It was too white for a fire. It didn't last for very long, 20 seconds at the most.
They searched the mountainside, but there was no sign of a crash. So what was the light? Ufologist Andy Roberts has researched the Berwyn UFO for years. Although a skeptic, he admits there is a central mystery to the incident involving another key witness.
At a village nearby called Llanderfel, there was a district nurse called Pat Evans. She felt the explosion there, and because she was a nurse and had all the medical equipment, thought if a plane's crashed, I could get up there and give much-needed help until the emergency services arrived.
Pat Evans was with her 2 teenage daughters, 4 miles from Hugh Lloyd when the earth tremor hit.
So she picked up her 2 young daughters, got them in the car, drove the 10-15 minute drive up onto the B4391 road, expecting to see an aircraft crashed and in flames. This is the road that she was driving on, and it's a road that she knew very well, so she had no problems driving up here at night. And obviously she was out there looking for what she thought was going to be a plane disaster. And just as she came out from the other side of this copse of trees, she was absolutely astonished to see far across the hills to the left a huge ball of red, white, orange, pulsating light.
Whatever the object was, it was too far from the road to be reached on foot. Pat and her daughters watched, astounded at the ball of light, slowly pulsating and changing colour.
She described it as being half the size of the moon, and around this object were moving torch lights and vehicle lights. She realised that it clearly wasn't a crashed aircraft and that someone or some people were there attending to whatever it was, and realising that, she drove back home and went to bed, and to this day is completely mystified by what it was.
So what did Pat Evans and Hugh Lloyd see that night? We reveal that even the arrival of the mysterious men in black couldn't provide all the answers. The unidentified sightings by Pat Evans and Hugh Lloyd in Berwyn, Wales in 1974 have gone down in UFO folklore. The recently released MOD files have added even more mystery. Researchers from the British Geological Survey were quickly dispatched to Berwyn to investigate an earth tremor that had registered 3.5 on the Richter scale.
Immediately after the earthquake, we were getting a lot of reports, some of them rather complex ones about lights in the sky, lights on the hill. So I brought a small team of people down to ask the local people around here what they'd seen, what they'd heard, what they'd felt.
The British Geological Survey team have become known in Berwyn legend as the Men in Black, as they were dressed in dark suits, official-looking, and were going door to door.
Some people seem to think the whole event was rather suspicious and that we simple scientists from the Geological Survey had something to do with suspicious events around here.
Files containing Chris's notes recall his interview with nurse Pat Evans, who saw the unidentified light.
I have here the notes that I made when I talked to Pat Evans. She felt the shaking, but also she was very concerned about lights that she saw in the sky. She thought there was a big red light, like a glowing red fire. This is a copy of one of the maps that we, with our team, used when we were going around the area talking to people, and we were able, therefore, to put on the map exactly where we got that interview from, and therefore exactly what that person saw, heard and felt.
This British Geological Survey map, buried in the vaults, is a revelation. It shows the anomalous lights seen by Pat Evans and Hugh Lloyd both appeared in the same small area of hillside at the same time. Ufologist Andy Roberts returns to the same spot on the mountainside where Pat and her daughters saw the UFO, and where Pat Evans told her story to Andy Roberts in 1998.
When I brought Pat Evans up onto this mountain road in 1998 and she told me her story then, I photographed her, and the photograph that I took showed her pointing to where she saw what she saw in 1974, and judging by this photograph she was pointing over there, and which we know is where the police and farmers were searching that night.
Pat Evans was on the Llangannock to Welshpool Road, which is just beyond the forestry there. So if she was there, she probably saw the same lights as we saw. You know, because it's dead in line. I'm nearly positive that's the same lights as she saw.
The recent files show the MOD's explanation for the sudden explosion and mysterious lights.
Subsequent search of the hillsides in question revealed no sign of impact, however. The Meteorological Office considered that these sightings could have been occasioned by a bolide, that is to say a meteor which enters the Earth's atmosphere and burns up before reaching the ground. A private investigation done on behalf of the British Astronomical Society concluded, however, that the meteor may in fact have disintegrated over Manchester, and that its appearance was preceded at 8:30 p.m. by an earth tremor in the Berwyn Mountains with which it has no connection. So they were saying again, these are two things that happened coincidentally on the same night. You've got a meteor burning up in the atmosphere, and also you've got an earth tremor.
So is this incredible coincidence, two separate natural phenomena, a meteor shower and an earthquake happening simultaneously, in itself a complete answer to the mystery? Many UFO believers think not. They believe the files failed to answer the big question: what was the source of light Pat Evans and
sounded the base? We kind of took up a bet, really. There was a UFO investigator who was saying that he made up Dulce and the whole thing was fake, and that he just released it into the UFO community to show them, oh, UFO investigators are stupid because look, I just made up this whole thing. We took offense to that. So myself, Dr. Fred Bell, the late Dr. Fred Bell, Dr. Jim Delatoso, Paul Shepard, Joe Randazzo, and a group of us went to Dulce, and Dr. Delatoso had actually come up with a what he called a data tabling, which is for deep underground sensing radar. He pioneered this. So we sounded the mountain and then took slices of sound data, pounding it into the mountain, then put them all together like a loaf of bread, like slices on a loaf of bread, with a Cray supercomputer at the University of San Diego. And we proved that the base was there. Actually physically proved it. I've got the tape, I've got the whole thing. It's got an atomic reactor at the center. You can see the various levels actually on the, for all intents and purposes, a sonogram, literally like a radar image. And but you can also see, the more interesting part about this is you can actually see the jet tubes underneath, because there's things actually coming and going in the bottom. And that's what triggered what we call the Dulce War. Dulce is key to everything that's going on in the background, because Dulce was the place where the government's entire plan with the extraterrestrials went completely off the rails. We discovered that they weren't doing what they said they were doing. We discovered that they were actively harming people, and here's how it goes. There was a group of what they call the mole men coming up underneath that were actually completing this tunnel to run what they called the red line, which runs east-west, and the blue line, which runs north-south, I believe. And as they came into this, there was a conflict underground. So somebody got shot in the hand. Testimony by Phil Schneider, for example, who was killed he was murdered in February '96 But that what started a Dulce conflict, because then we sent another team down there and we found that there were the bones of tens of thousands of human beings, like literally bleached. Like they'd taken all these people and they weren't abducting them to do genetic experiments on them or collect sperm and eggs. They were actually boiling them down into soup for some kind of future invasion. And that's what then triggered Reagan to then give the okay for what became known as the Dulce War, to actually clean out the facility. There was a conflict that happened in '77 in which 4 guys died, 2 Secret Service men, which I'm not going to explain, but 4 of our guys died, which was the first big conflict. And then we went in and cleared out the base somewhere around, like I said, it was about 86 or so. But by 89, when we were there, either it was still active, but one way or another, that nuclear pile was still functioning underneath, and it was putting out a frequency of 440 hertz, which is military standard. So it was doing something. Now, after we sounded the base, there were 2 unusual sightings over Dulce. In January, the first week of January, there was a big green glowing ball that was actually reported by the Apaches there, that then swept west across the western United States. Actually, right from here, you can see where it went. It actually went over through the sky, went the other side of Catalina, which is right there, and took a left turn. Now, I had a roommate at the time that came in and told me about this, and we saw it in the newspaper the next day because he was out scuba diving out there. Then, a few days later, another green ball came up out of the facility and went over the eastern United States, which was actually then reported in the news. And as far as I know, there hasn't been any real activity around Dulce since then. But as I said, Dulce was the key because that was where we actually gave, under what was known as the Project Sigma Treaty that we signed in '64, that's where we actually then gave them the lower levels of the facility. So we didn't really even know what was going on below what's called Green Level 4 of Dulce until that conflict broke out.
Final question for you. You just pointed to Catalina. Right here, supposedly there's bases underground. A lot of people see craft coming from out of the water, going up into the sky. What do you know about these USOs and the supposed base in Malibu and in the Catalina Channel?
Okay, well, you can actually, the base in Malibu was just revealed. I mean, I've been telling people this for years. And back in the Area 51 days, between 91 and 93, we heard about this and we would go, actually you can see it right there at Portuguese Bend, right there where Marineland used to be. Now it's a big Trump resort, but there was nothing there back in that days. And we would sit out there and we would see these blue discs actually glowing in the water between here and Catalina. Now, there's a reason, for example, why our government will not allow supersonic air travel to Hawaii or Japan over the South Pacific, because we have so much stuff in the South Pacific. Like, for example, the SST supersonic transport, why did it only fly to Paris? Why didn't it fly to Japan or Hawaii or someplace else? Because we have so much stuff in the South Pacific that we didn't want anything that looked like a sonic missile that they might blow up. Now, you can see underneath Malibu, now on the other side of this you have, well, way up the coast a bit, you've got Vandenberg Air Force Base, but here you've got Point Hueneme, and then you've got Point Magoo here. Point Magoo is where they launched the white tanker jets to chemtrail this entire area. So you'll see the chemtrails out within the next couple of days here. There's one there, there's more there, because they always come right before it's going to rain or when it's going to be foggy. Here comes one now. Here comes the helicopter. But right underneath the hills, all through here, you can actually see on Google Maps, you can actually see how this underground base has actually been mounted underneath the cliffs over in Malibu. Now, from the other side of Catalina, which is right behind us, all that stuff over Skull Island, and they sank Skull Island a while ago, but that's a gigantic naval testing ground there. Now, I spoke to a top-level military guy who was working with what they call SINCPAC in the Vietnam War, and his claim was back in he had a couple of interesting stories. Number one, he was at Area 51 where he saw a huge. He said it looked like an SR-71, but it had a skin on it that felt like a dolphin, and he was being told that this had extra solar capabilities. In other words, the ability to go out to the edge of the solar system and come back. The other thing that he did was that he claimed that he went from a naval base here in Long Beach, actually, and that he got on a submarine, and that submarine actually went through a series of underground aqueducts, and that he actually came up in Kirtland, New Mexico, at the Kirtland Air Force Base in New Mexico, going underground, through a series of tunnels and aqueducts that were built underneath the California shelf. So,
Dr. Sean David Morton, lots of information, incredible insight, things I've never heard before right here at Third Phase of Moon. You know, I got one big question for you.
Okay.
Do you think the government's ever going to reveal what's going on?
Well, it's going to come to a point where they're going to have to. You'll notice how the government responses have changed over the past 70 years, where they've gone from UFOs don't exist to UFOs aren't dangerous, but people who see them are and should be horsewhipped, as the Condon report said, to then now they're going to, we can either confirm or deny. The challenge here might be is that there are no UFOs, they're all IFOs. They know exactly what they are and where they're coming from, so they are telling the truth, saying there are no UFOs. The challenge with any of these governments is, once again, govern and mint means control of the mind. So, mint means mind, actually, so it's all control of the mind. And they've really painted themselves into a corner with all this information. If the government came out tomorrow, if Obama really came out tomorrow and said, yes, there are extraterrestrials, and peeled off his face and said humans are tasty, which is probably, he's already an illegal alien, why not an extraterrestrial? Would you believe him is the challenge. And the other challenge would be until they fill the skies, or I'm sure they could play it off all kinds of different ways. Again, they believe that the minute you admit to this, once again, you destroy religions, you possibly destroy, once you introduce the technology, you destroy the economic fabric, you destroy the socio-political fabric, but we are close to it. The biggest thing is the internet's gotten out of the box, and that has become the new sphere, or the seventh chakra of the planet, really. And that free and open exchange of information is preparing everybody for what's coming. Now, so that's my question, that they will have no choice at some point, but they can ignore it and stick their head in the sand for as long as they can.
Freedom of information is happening right now around the world. How will people from watching right here at Third Phase of Moon to listen to you, how do they get in contact with you?
They can actually listen to my show. Go to my website, www.strangeuniverseradio.com. I was one of the original producers on Strange Universe, the TV series back in the 90s. Strangeuniverseradio.com, which is on revolutionradio.rocks. And so there you go. That's how you get in touch with me. Or SeanDavidMorton.com as well.
Sean, appreciate you joining us right here at Third Phase of Moon. And don't forget to listen to drjradiolive.com. Incredible insight there as well. And if you captured anything amazing in regards to UFOs, you have information that you want to get out, share it with the world right here at Third Phase of Moon. Blake Cousins.
Phase of Moon. Third Phase.
Welcome back to Third Phase of Moon. Blake Cousins here, just a mile away from LAX, where tens of millions of people travel yearly. Now we're here at a special spot of what people claim could be a jump room to Mars. We're here with Dr. J. Andy Elias on location. Hey, thanks for joining us right here at Third Phase on location in LA. Dr. J, tell me, what's the significance behind this building?
Well, aside from the numbers, this is the crazy part. Apparently, this building actually houses a jump room, an artificial Stargate, where people supposedly get to other dimensions, other planets, other solar systems. Mars is the famous example. Again, I don't know how we can verify this, but that is apparently the building where the jump room is located.
Now, who's using these jump rooms? That's the big question. We've had contacts right here at Third Phase of Moon that have claimed that President Obama has jumped to Mars. Do you think that the jump room's in this building, Dr. J?
You know, I've heard that very same rumor that he jumped to Mars and from a jump room and not a natural Stargate, an artificial one. Now, is it this particular building? That's the key. I wish we could find out. I wish we could prove that rumor one way or another.
Absolutely.
But, you know, it's possible that we're standing at the front of the building where the President of the United States possibly used to jump to Mars.
It's going to take a whistleblower to blow the lid off of what's going on behind us in this building. I know there are a few that have spoken up to the public. One of them spoke to Carrie Cassidy. What did we learn?
Yes, as a matter of fact, that's where the whole story came forward. She'd probably be the expert to ask about jump rooms. This building, the whole room that they talked about, came from a source that apparently jumped into another dimension or another planet. I don't recall what it was, and he told the story to Carrie Cassidy. And so yes, she is definitely the expert on this situation and knows which room, and has apparently spoken to a traveler, per se. That's what apparently they call them.
Let me ask you this. Has it been known or been mentioned that is this extraterrestrial technology at work here?
Well, that's one thing I really gotta say is, of course, remember that Ben Rich, right? Ben Rich, Lockheed, Skunk Works, said at a UCLA alumni meeting, at the very end of his lecture, he showed a slide of a flying saucer and then said, we have things in the Nevada desert that would make George Lucas envious. Then he goes on to say, we have the technology to take E.T. home. He said this to professional people. Jan Harzan being in the audience, Jan Harzan being executive director of MUFON today. Point I'm getting at is if someone of that caliber of who's who was talking about technology that would make George Lucas envious, wouldn't you think that it includes something like a Stargate, an artificial Stargate?
You know, Dr. J, I just noticed employee from the building has just come out to smoke a cigarette. Let's see if we could get some questions to him right now while we're here. How's it going? I'm with the YouTube channel Third Phase of Moon, and I was just wanting to know if I could ask you a question. If you mind, we'll blur your face out, and we won't even use it. But I just wanted to ask a question. We've heard in this building that there's a jump room that you could jump from here to Mars within a split second. It sounds wild, but that's what our YouTube channel is all about. We have 250,000 subscribers, and we've gotten information that people said this building that they're holding a jump room and possibly.
I don't know what you're talking about, man.
No word, nothing.
No.
Okay, man. Hey, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
You have a good one.
Yeah.
Hey, how's it going? Hey, my name is Blake Cousins with Third Phase of Moon. Have you ever heard of the UFO phenomenon?
No.
Well, we have 250,000 viewers on our channel.
Okay.
And, this is serious. They claim that this place has a jump room on the 4th floor.
Okay.
That you could step inside and jump immediately to Mars.
Okay.
Do you know anything about that?
No, but
nothing.
They're probably smoking something on that floor.
All right, man. Appreciate it. Thanks a lot. Dr. J, does that answer or response surprise you in any way?
No, because that's the whole reason. Apparently it's to hide things in plain sight. Put them in some office building and don't tell anybody except the people that work there, as opposed to having something in some military installation. I mean, I don't know. In some ways that doesn't make sense because in military installations you have guards.
Yes.
But at the same time,
it seems like they're not trying to hide anything, but what about just being this close to LAX? Now, I find that very suspicious for traveling. This is the 3rd most visited and busiest airport on the planet, or in the United States to say. I think there might be something to that. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, actually that crossed my mind too. If, again, Carrie Cassidy being the expert pointing out that this is the building that people are jumping rooms in, why is they, of all locations, pick one that is right where planes are landing? So, yeah.
It's interesting. I'm glad we made it here. I don't think we're going to be able to get in the building. There is security that's not allowing us in, but hey, we gave it a shot. Dr. J, off to the next adventure. Let's get to it.
All right.
If anybody's out there has captured anything amazing in regards to UFOs, you have an insider that might have worked at this building, knows anything about jump rooms, have them contact Third Phase of Moon via Skype, Facebook. We're standing by. Blake Cousins. We'll see.
Phase of Moon. Third Phase of Moon.
Check that out. Yo, look at that. What is that? Up in the sky right there. I don't think so. Not with lights like that. Tell you what, I've seen some crazy stuff come over here. That's definitely not helicopters. Hey, what's happening?
Yeah, it may be helicopter.
helicopters, they may have some special lighting.
I've never seen lights like that on helicopters. Let's see if we hear anything. Especially coming out of that storm like that.
Well, it may be something that they're trying to, you know, they're sent up just to see and track. But those lights look like candles or flames almost.
They're moving. At first I thought maybe it was Chinese lanterns, but that's not Chinese lanterns. Yeah, the other one just took off the other way, didn't it? What in the world is that?
What was captured in William Chow's backyard in Hong Kong? If you know what it is, leave your comments below. I also want to thank Greg for submitting his footage all the way from Florida. And if you captured anything amazing in regards to UFOs, you know who to contact. Third Phase of Moon. Share it with us, share it with the world. Everybody, keep your eyes on the skies. We're not alone. Blake Cousins, we'll see you again next time.
Phase of Moon.
Welcome back. Blake Cousins here, Third Phase of Moon on location, Redondo Beach. Special treat. We're going to be meeting the man that summons UFOs, and he's going to join us right here, Third Phase of Moon, Mr. Robert Bingham. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, you're welcome. Nice to see you again.
Wow, first time in person with Robert Bingham. We've known and collaborated for, what, 3-4 years now. He's been doing a lot of events in downtown Los Angeles. We're here at Redondo, and we want to get some UFOs summoned. But before we get to that, I wanted to ask Robert some big questions right here. Robert, what got you started into the UFO summoning from the beginning? Was it all about the crowds, the public, or did you get this knowledge from the beginning by yourself? Tell me, how did it all go down?
Well, as you know, after I did that interview with you on Skype, I did a couple of things for Mark Guzman, where he invited 40 people. And about 40 to 50 people showed up, and we had a really great outcome. I mean, a lot of craft showed up. And I believe that you told me, why don't you go public? I think that's how it happened. I told you I was going to go public, and then you told me, where are you going to do it? I said, the Park Plaza, and it took off from there. And it took on a life of its own, actually.
Absolutely. You know, it was quite interesting when I got that cold call via Skype. We asked the people from around the world to, share their stories, their UFO videos, and then Mark Guzman calls us via Skype cold call, and he's in kind of a overwhelming state in regards to what he saw and what you shared with him. And I could tell that he was kind of visibly shook, and even his wife was. And what happened next when the people showed up at the Park Plaza Hotel was quite interesting. Let's take a look at some of the footage right now. We're back right here, Redondo. Mr. Robert Bingham, the man that summons UFOs. I want to ask you, when did you first realize that you had this special power to communicate with the aliens?
Well, one night I was looking at a room at a place that I was boarding at, and I was going to switch rooms. And it was kind of a little spooky, you know, as far as the Santa Ana winds blowing. And for some reason, my friend says, hey, it's kind of like really strange night tonight. And I said, we're going to see an alien tonight. And so when we actually seen a ship coming down the street, looked like it had diamond facets, and it was all black, and it was just morphing a little. And as it was going down the street, the level of my the second story, my balcony, it was just so incredible. I remembered that I said I was, you know, that we were going to see aliens. So the next day, I actually said, well, if I did it then, I'll try it again.
There you go.
And so I did it, and they came, and I kept doing it and repeating this process. And as they came, I finally got a camera. I started recording it and conducting my own little experiments. I didn't want to go public because I didn't want the scrutiny, but I knew one day that I would have to. And so when I ran into Mark Guzman and we did that Skype, it went kind of viral.
Yeah.
I said, well, this is my time to go public. And so,
you know, the rest is history after that.
Yeah.
What's quite interesting is people wanted to know how it's done. What are the techniques? And then you put out a video in regards to the techniques, the steps it is to summon these UFOs. And all of a sudden, Third Phase of Moon started receiving videos from around the world. People that claim they've learned this from you, and it's quite interesting. The phenomenon has grown, and people are picking up on the techniques. What's next, Robert? What's going to be the next big thing for you?
The next big thing for me is doing a documentary and writing a book. That's the next big thing. And actually, I want to try to get, I want to get a TV series and teach people all around the world that they're given a God-given right to summon. God gave us all the ability to do this, but I guess we lost it throughout the ages, and I discovered it in sharing this with the world. And so that's what we're doing now.
You know, I'm quite excited. It's the first time I've been on location while Robert Bingham's going to perform this summoning here in the next few minutes. But I wanted to go over some other footage that we've filmed in the past through people that have submitted right here at Third Phase of Moon videos from on location. Let's get to it.
This one has been here about 10 minutes, and I've been having trouble trying to...
You know, there are some skeptics out there that, you know, claim that it's simply, you know, they're balloons up in the skies. What do you got to say to the skeptics on these UFOs, these anomalies that you're capturing in the sky?
Well, I'd like to let all the people out there know that they're not balloons. And the reason why they come looking like things that you normally see in the sky is they don't want to raise any fears with the public. Or I'm sure if I went out there and summoned out there where there's, you know, not in a metropolis, that they would come in their true nature, which is a ship and things like that. But they don't want to raise alarms or have anything with the government as far as the government getting mad at me. So.
It's interesting you say that. What's your opinion on the beings that you communicate with? Some people say they're good aliens, they're bad aliens, different species visit planet Earth. The communications that you're having, have you ever come across kind of a, you know, an alien that's not so friendly?
Well, no, they're all friendly, but I mean, I think Wonton is the closest one to being looking kind of malevolent and dark. But Wonton is really a great video. But they're all, I'm sure they're malevolent beings, and there's benevolent. And I strictly am attracting the benevolent ones. But although the malevolent ones do come around to check out what their brothers are doing, because they're both brothers.
Sure.
And so, you know, it's what you're going after. If you're going after attracting malevolent things, I'm sure you'll get it. And if you're attracting benevolent, which everybody should be doing, you'll get that also.
You know, it's quite interesting. Some people claim that, you know, you shouldn't be doing this, that summoning these things are, you know, you're conjuring the devil is what some people claim, obviously. Huh?
I'm glad you brought that up.
Sure.
That, in my opinion, that's strictly the powers that be, religious powerhouses that want you to be not rocking their boat and not searching elsewhere, not having an open mind. But I believe that God gave us this right, to go out there and to talk to Him, not, the powers that be are going to say that they're devils and everything. They've been doing that to all the great thinkers throughout history that ever came up with something different. They always said, oh, the devil, the devil.
The devil did it.
Yeah, the devil. So, no, I leave it up to the people to have their own mind and their own judgment, and that's basically it. You got to make that opinion yourself, and all I know is if you want to know, you can know, and if you don't have to know.
Fascinating. Robert Bingham, there is, what would be the best place to do this location right now in regards to summoning UFOs? There is a pier right out here. Do you think it'd be a good place to do it?
I could do it anywhere, actually, but I would like to do it over there if that you didn't mind.
Okay, let's do it over there. You ready, Brent? Let's follow Robert Bingham and I and the rest of the crew and see if we could see some UFOs. This looks like a good place, Robert. The Redondo Pier. It's a little overcast and windy at the moment. Could this be a problem?
Well, yes and no. I always just have faith, and when you summon, you have to have a lot of faith. And so we'll see what happens. I'm going to go over the technique right now. There's certain steps, and the most important step is to keep it simple. I'll go over the steps of summoning right now, and we'll see what happens. Okay, guys?
All right, let's do it.
Okay, I'll pick a spot in the sky, like that little cloud right there, and I'll intensely look at it, and I'll telepathically tell them to come with my eyes. And I'll try to look as deep into that sky as I can, and with a message for them to come, and they'll show up, and we'll see what happens. But you got to keep it as simple. I mean, it's really something that you have to have faith and believe that they are going to come. So that's what I'll do right now.
Okay, Robert Bingham is going to be summoning UFOs. He's going over the techniques. We're going to keep our eyes peeled. We got camera guys right here with equipment, long lenses. Let's hopefully we capture something right here on the Redondo Pier.
Okay, and it's really, I don't stay there too long. I keep it simple, and I telegraph that message up there and see what happens.
All right.
A lot of times they come really fast, and sometimes it takes a little time. We'll just see what happens. I find summoning a lot like fishing, and a lot of people, it's like fishing. People get excited on the capture of that craft and what type of craft it is. It's just like people that get big fish and little fish. It's the excitement. It's a lot like fishing, and so I just wanted to put that out there. So it's a quest for me, but a lot of people, it's more like a hobby. So.
Let me ask you this, Robert. Is some places that you do this have better results than other places?
That's a hard one. I've had results. At my studio.
I know. I've seen you do it in Arizona.
I've done it everywhere.
Yeah, everywhere. Yeah.
I get a lot of good action at Culver City now because I'm there a lot working. Culver City Studios. I guess it's really, my home base is the Park Plaza.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was the first day we did the summoning over there at the Park Plaza, and you had a close encounter that day. You almost lost your life?
Oh, that was as I left that event, the first event that I ever did, I was driving down the street and I had a green light to turn onto a boulevard, but I couldn't see the traffic coming this way, but I heard an engine, so I stopped before I got into the intersection, and it passed my bumper. And if I would have continued, he would have hit me on the driver's side and killed me. But
was it a coincidence?
I believe it was elements within the, I don't want to say the government, but elements within dark forces that were, they warned me not to go public. They said something could happen to me, and I believe that they protect me up there.
What are some of the repercussions of going public? I know there's a lot of ridicule. We get it right here at Third Phase of Moon. When people don't understand what they're seeing, you know, they come across pretty ignorant, and sometimes, you know.
Well, I think the repercussions, like they, you know, they told me not to go public with it because it was a need-to-know basis, and the public didn't need to know, and that something could happen to me if I did go public with it. But I believe that the public should know. You know, I think the public's ready to handle all this, and they should know, because Fukushima and the Gulf is a prime example of where these leaders that are keeping us in the dark are heading the world into this kind of, it's not going to last too long, you know, so we got to take the horse by the reins and kind of steer the earth in, I mean the population into a different way of doing things, you know, a more ecological and a more, you might say a more, the word is I'm trying to get is micromanagement the earth, you know. We gotta micromanage it, and everything I'm talking about, from waste, especially consumption of resources and things like that, man. We gotta really be aware of what we're doing.
All right, we're having the cameras peeled. We're gonna keep our eyes to the skies. We'll be right back. All right, things are happening right now. What appears to be almost like two suns, but now clouds are covering it up. It's hard to capture. I should have brought my sunglasses. Robert,
yes.
What are we looking at here?
Well, Evo was looking, and I've seen this before on YouTube. Some people catch, there's like two planets, or right here it looks like kind of three of them, but it looks like two suns, and if you get it at the right angle and the right shade, you see it. You just got to keep looking at it. And I believe it's two suns.
Are you catching that, Brent? Anything? It's hard to capture on film, but I'm seeing it with the naked eye.
I got it.
Oh, you did? You got it, good.
Yes.
Well, something's going down here.
And I've always, you know, when I talk to people at events and things, I've always tell them they got to focus really on what's going on around them, otherwise they'll miss it. And so, just if you really concentrate and focus, you'll see things that, see, you can see the roundness of something like another sun on the right.
We're here with John. He's been following around Robert Bingham for quite some time. Tell me some of the experiences. You know, you've been close to Robert while he's doing these summoning events.
Right.
What's the most exciting thing that you've seen in the sky?
I've seen a lot of things. I mean, there's a lot, but the triangle deal. MacArthur Park, we filmed a triangle up in the sky in the daytime, broad daylight, 40 people sitting there watching this thing. And it was just amazing. Now, they were putting on a show for us. I mean, it was cool, you know, and it felt good. For some reason, it made you feel good. I don't know why, you know, people go, well, that might be evil shit. But I don't know, it felt good, you know.
You had a sense of euphoria while this was going on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and a lot of morphing objects, things that look like snakes that are lighting up and transforming into all kinds of crazy stuff, you know, and people get all freaked out that these are just balloons sometimes. They go, look, that's a balloon, but if you look at the tether hanging down, the thing's like a tree trunk. I mean, so you know this is not a balloon. So, but once they get past that, they see the way it's moving. Sometimes it'll look like a lollipop. It'll look like a balloon from a distance at a glance, but when you're watching it, thing's moving like a lollipop, the string's like straight, and it's a light, it's some kind of an energy pulse coming from the bottom of this thing to look like a balloon. They're mimicking things.
Let me ask you this, with the multiple eyewitnesses on the ground, that must be a special moment because you're not alone. when this is going down. You have your cameras, you have multiple eyewitnesses experiencing the same thing. Tell me about that.
Yeah, well, that's the best part of it to me, is watching people that don't believe it at all, and then they see it. They don't even know what to do. You know, they're like, ha, 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 ha. So that's the fun part. And they go home with this whole new look at life now. I'm gonna go home and stare at the sky, you know, because they want to see it again. And they will. Once you see them once, I think you start seeing them a lot. It's like they trust you or something. I don't know what it is, but they've been following me around. I'll walk out of my house sometimes and just sitting up there. I got no camera, I'm just like, you know, I like it around people around, you know. You just don't know for sure.
Grant here has been following Robert Bingham for quite some time. He's working on a documentary with never before seen footage. I'm excited to see that. Grant, tell me some of your best experiences with Robert. Let's get started.
Well, I met Robert close to 2 years ago now. I saw one of his videos on YouTube, and it piqued my interest. And so I started researching him. I came across a bunch of his other videos, and I sent him an email and reached out to him and let him know that I was a documentarian, and I was curious to meet with him for the possibility of doing a project on him and his experiences. And 2 days later, he called me, and that was a Monday, and then we scheduled a time to meet on Wednesday, and that was the spring of 2013. So I went over to his house in Eagle Rock, and it was quite spectacular.
Have you ever seen a UFO before that?
Myself personally, yes. I've seen them throughout my life. Seen some pretty interesting objects in the sky that were unexplainable, mechanical, and didn't resemble anything man-made or Earth-like.
You were telling me a little earlier that there's going to be some footage that's going to blow you away. I haven't seen it yet, but tell me about what people are going to expect to see in this documentary about Robert Bingham.
Well, I think what people are going to expect to see is a real detailed encounter of how he discovered this, other people that have also explored this and their results, Jim Martin, Jonathan Castro, several other people throughout the world. I've spoken to quite a few, and their personal experiences. I myself have filmed, I couldn't tell you how many objects in the sky with Robert. Some that had that similarity to a balloon, some that were mechanical, some that were angelic, and some that looked like just a form of energy that was emitting its own light source.
You know, it's quite interesting because they do come in all shapes and sizes when Robert Bingham does this. Are you summoning them now? Have you learned the technique yourself?
You know, I got to be honest with you. I, in the beginning, made a conscious decision not to. Only because I wanted to stay true to the story and not be biased.
Sure.
But I got to admit that recently I have had some personal experiences on my own without anybody, and that was quite interesting. So I think that being exposed to this consciousness or this reality that's happening, you can't help it. It's once you open yourself up to it and accept the fact that there is more than we know, you start realizing how much more, I suppose.
Okay, Robert Bingham is making contact, and we got Ava, assistant to Robert Bingham, for just a little over 3 years. I'm sure you've been on this roller coaster ride with Robert. What's the most exciting UFO sighting that you've had?
Well, this last one that we just got, the Abracadabra, I saw that one. That was in my front yard. It was great, exciting, and colorful, and I don't see that great, but it came down close enough for us to see it. We've had a lot of sightings in my front yard, a lot. And the other one was the first time that he summoned for me in Highland Park when he was living on Avenue 59. It was beautiful. They came in and they flashed us. They said, "Here we are. Hello, hello, hello." And I was so excited. I said, "There they are." And I can talk to them telepathically. I get messages from them.
Well, you know, Ava, you were just telling me just off camera that you're an abductee yourself, correct? And
I wasn't abducted.
You weren't abducted?
No,
How did it go down? You volunteered?
Volunteered to go on board ship. And they showed me that I could be, well, what they told me was that I'm a pilot and a navigator. So they showed me what I can do by taking me aboard ship, and all I can tell you is that I saw those stars going by right through the window of the ship, zoom. It was so exciting. I loved it. And they said, you can drive it now. Telepathically, they told me.
Wow.
I said, but I didn't see any knobs or anything. I said, how can I do this? He said, you know how. It was clear. Everything was clear. So with the thought.
It was instinctual.
Yes. And with the thought, you tell it what to do. So
wow.
I came out of that. It was kind of like a dream like, but I know it happened. And I kept thinking about it, you know. What did I just go through? Well, my friends up there, my telepathic friends that I speak to every day. I talk to them every day.
A lot of the times the UFOs will show up, you know, we don't see it with our naked eye, but sensitive camera equipment captures, you know, UFO phenomenon. We're going to be looking over the footage. Robert, I know you have a lot of footage yourself. Is there sometimes when you didn't see the UFO and then you go back and view it and you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I missed that?
Yes, there are a lot of times. Just recently I took photos of a helicopter, 3 of them, Army helicopters, and we discovered there was drones, little drones, all around the helicopter. When I do most of my orbs, there's always drones around them. And we only notice the drones when we put them on the monitor and we really look at them and we discover a lot of things. So I always suggest people really look at this stuff and they'll discover that they did capture something.
No, that's that's the interesting thing about it. Millions of people around the world take photographs, videos every day, millions of hours of stock footage developed on an hourly basis around the world. Who knows what is being captured and what will be discovered and shared. You know, we're still keeping an eye out. We did see the phenomenon of what looked and appeared to be 2 suns in the skies. We're going to have our cameras rolling.
I'm looking right here, and if you look to the right of the buoy, straight down, it looks like a periscope, a stick sticking up. Do you see it? Look. To the right, further up of the buoy.
Oh yeah.
You see that stick like sticking up?
It's like there's a submarine periscope sticking out, like maybe.
Really,
that's strange.
Isn't it?
What we're looking at is some kind of rod, approximately maybe a half-mile out to sea. It doesn't make much sense, Robert. You would think that there would be some kind of safety light, a bell of some sort to avoid some kind of collision.
Right. You know, it's very unusual. I've been looking at the oceans, you know, wherever I'm at, and a buoy would have a big old, like that. You see it? It's red and white, and it's huge. But you can't miss it. But this is just a rod sticking out of the ocean.
I'm going to look for some maybe law enforcement, Coast Guard, see if we can find out exactly what this object is floating just off Redondo Beach Pier, about a half-mile out. Absolutely a strange phenomenon happening right now.
Really strange. It's like a periscope to me. That's what caught my eye. It's like a huge periscope from a submarine.
Something's happening.
Exactly.
We're looking at photographs that Brennan just captured of what appears to be a saucer, kind of disc-shaped object in the skies. It's definitely not a bird. We see no wings, a head, or a tail of what, I don't know what it is, but something's going down right here as Robert Bingham summons UFOs. Robert, you know, it's been an incredible day in person with Mr. Robert Bingham, the man that summons UFOs on location right here at Redondo Beach. We noticed an anomaly right out here, just a half a mile off the pier. Mr. Robert Bingham, any last words for the Third Phase of Moon viewers and the world?
Yes, I believe that this year is going to be disclosure, and disclosure is really not going to come from the government. It's going to come from the people such as myself around the world that are bringing this phenomenon and calling them down. And that's the kind of disclosure you're going to get. And I want to one day have everybody summon around the world and bring them over their cities. And this way we'll know, and everybody else will know that they are real and we're not alone.
The world needs to wake up, and if anybody out there has captured anything incredible in regards to the UFO phenomenon, like Robert Bingham, submit it to Third Phase of Moon via Skype, Facebook, share it with us, share it with the world. Robert, again, thanks a lot for joining us.
It's been nice talking to Blake.
Quite incredible.
Oh, thank you.
Flying object, flying object, flying object.